You're listening to Mike Adams and Chris Savory, the record collectors from the BBC.
On BBC Local Radio in Shropshire, North Staffordshire, South Cheshire and the West Midlands, we present Mike Adams and Chris Savory, the record collectors, from now until 9 tonight.
With you in the Midlands, BBC Radio.
Because I'm crazy about you butterfly, you butterfly.
And that, of course, is Charlie Gracie and Butterfly. He had a lot of hits, and he also started his rock and roll career, believe it or not, in 1951. He was writing rock and roll songs in 51. We'll be talking to Charlie shortly, but I'll give you another flavour of his music.
Three testing. 1, 2, 3 testing. Testing. 1, 2, 3 testing. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
You want a station break or something like that? I'll do one.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Well, a very special guest on the Record Collectors tonight, and a visitor to the United Kingdom to promote his brand new album, which I'll be featuring shortly on the Record Collectors, is none other than Charlie Gracie. Welcome to Britain.
Hello, Mikey Rooney McValio Zoot, as we say in the States.
Now, you've seen it all, done it all, and bought the T-shirt rights. Tell us a bit about your life.
Oh, gee whiz, it's a long one, but it seems like it went by so quickly so far. I began playing the guitar when I was 10 years old, right after the Second World War in 1946. My dad was going to buy himself a suit, but he decided he wanted to make something of his firstborn son. I'm the oldest of 3 brothers. And he bought me a guitar and taught me a few chords that he knew, and then finally sent me to a teacher, then finally to another teacher. And I studied guitar for about 6.5 years, and finally my teacher said, I taught you everything I know. And I went on to start playing little weddings and serenades and house parties, and finally I did an amateur show with Paul Whiteman, who was the famous orchestra leader in America, and I won the family's first refrigerator. Yeah, we had an ice box before that. And then somebody heard me on the radio while I was performing on the show, because it was syndicated radio and television, and I got my first record contract in 1951, late 51, early 52. That's before Elvis recorded, by the way.
Yeah, long before Elvis recorded. I mean, he first commercial release was 54. Yeah. What label were you on in 51?
I was on a company called Cadillac out of New York, and I did 6 sides, 3 records, to no great sales records or anything like that, but it got me started in the business. And I started doing, disc jockey shows like yours and visiting the guys, and they would play my records. A lot of the black stations played my records because they sounded black.
Yeah, what exactly was the style of music you were playing? How would you describe it?
Well, I was playing rock and roll, but the phrase was not coined yet. You see, I don't want to say I was the first, because it's not true. I guess I was one of the first, perhaps 2 or 3 dozen people that were playing that kind of music in the States, along with some of our black artists who were playing the rhythm and blues, and some of the country records, and some of the old swing band. You put them all together, that's what rock and roll was about. Growing up during the war, I used to listen to the big bands, and my mother was a country fan, my dad was a swing fan, and then I turned the black stations on with my buddies. We listened to the black music. So if you put all those 3 together, they all like sort of mesmerized me. My brain, my head was full of this stuff. And when I began playing it, the only difference we did was we played it with a heavy backbeat on 2 and 4, right, which was a whole new sound. As a matter of fact, when my first manager used to book me into these clubs, they would call him up the next day and say, tell that kid to lower that amp, he's too loud. No, I had a little 6-inch speaker, So it was a new sound, and I would play during the lull. When the band would come off, I'd play the 20-minute break while the fellas had a smoke or a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or a beer, and I'd have more people dancing to me on the dance floor than the band.
Did you find much prejudice towards you? I mean, reading the history of rock and roll, the early days.
Well, I think a lot of the older guys resented that we had this new thing. You little cocker, what is, you're making all that noise, get out of here, But, I was making $175 a week. My father was making 75, so I was cooking. I thought I was a millionaire at the time. And I helped, I took the pay home to Mom in the envelope. And she'd give me $25 spending money, which was a lot of money for me. I'd had more than a couple of quarters,
Right.
2 bits, 4 bits, that was about it, We call them bits in America, the quarters,
What actually, those records didn't really take off in a big way that actually make you like a household name.
Of course not. No.
Well, what happened in the interim years between?
Well, I've always been a nightclub performer. And I was working in nightclubs all those years from 51 to late 56. After Cadillac, I went with 20th Century. And once again, no great success, but I started doing shows like Bandstand. This is pre-Dick Clark. There was a guy by the name of Bob Horn who was the host of the show. And I was on Bob's show many a time. He was quite a nice guy, as a matter of fact. He got in a little jackpot. He got fired, and Dick Clark was sitting in a little studio for about $125 a week, and he was a good-looking all-American kid, and he fell right into the slot.
I mean, that studio, when I see sort of the old films of it, and we get them on video, it looked a large studio, but in fact it was quite small.
No, it was small. Maybe it held 100 kids, something like that, 120. And they would dance every day, 5 days a week. Great exposure. As a matter of fact, I did both shows. I did the Bob Horn show, the Bandstand show, and then finally I did Dick Clark's many, many times. And I was the first coast-to-coast color cast artist on that show. Yeah. And then once I left 20th Century, I went with Cameo. And I recorded Butterfly December of 56. And by March 57, I had the #1 hit in America. Displaced Elvis for about 4 weeks. He went to Vegas. I went to Atlantic City. I've been there ever since.
And what happened? I mean, obviously, having a #1 hit at that time, I mean, the world was at your feet. I mean, who were you actually rubbing shoulders with? Who were you performing with then?
Well, we used to do a lot of the shows in New York, Chicago, Philadelphia. I mean, I did the Alan Freed show many a times, you know, the Easter Jubilee shows. I headlined that show in 57. And I had people like my old buddy Eddie Cochran was with me on the show. Wonderful kid, by the way. I still miss him very much. Bo Diddley, the Del Vikings, the Everly Brothers. This is all one show. Chuck Berry.
I mean, there's a lot of people, because Eddie Cochran died over here. I mean, do you have any memories of Eddie Cochran?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, he was my home quite a few times in South Philadelphia, where I was born and raised. And my mother would make the traditional Italo-American, you know, red sauce with the meatballs and the sausage and the braciole, and he loved Italian food. So him and Jerry, his manager, would come to my house. As a matter of fact, when I was on a road once, he called my mother and said, "Mom, Gracie, can Jerry and I come over for dinner, even though Charlie's not home?" She said, "Yeah, come on over." So the house was always, and as soon as the kids found out he was there, nobody wanted to talk to me anymore. They would have talked to Eddie. You know, he was a splendid young man, good-looking kid, no surgery done to his face. I mean, he was just a good-looking kid. He was a good person and a very talented guy. I mean, he was my closest friend of all the guys that I work with, and I work with them all, you know.
And did you work with Gene Vincent?
Well, no, I never met Gene, unfortunately. He also died very young, but I understand him and Eddie toured here a lot.
That's right.
After I came over. Yeah.
You mentioned Elvis before. Did you and Elvis ever rub shoulders?
I never met Elvis either. Isn't that funny? Yeah, I wish I did. I would have loved to have met him, but...
But you played with just about every other rock and roll star.
Yeah, well, you know, the funny thing is that there were a lot of package shows going on at the time, and if you were on a road with one show, you missed the guys on the other package. So I would say I worked with about maybe 70 to 80% of the artists of my time, but that 10 or 20% you never met. Our roads never crossed.
Different agents and different... I mean, America's a big place.
Well, I might have been in New York while they were in Los Angeles. That's 3,000 miles away. I live closer to England than I do to Los Angeles.
Just moving on then, I mean, after that #1 hit, what happened next?
Well, what happened was I was with Cameo for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, and I had a #1, I had a #9, I had a #16, and quite a few top 50s. But we had a little disagreement about royalty checks, I'm being perfectly honest with you, and I told them that I was dissatisfied with the kind of money they were paying me. After all, I sold 3.5 million copies of Butterfly that I know of. Right. God knows how many are over that. And the guy would give me, you know, a little pittance here and a pittance there, and finally I got a little ticked off, and I says, "Hey, I want my money." I think it was only fair to ask for it. But unbeknownst to me, when we got in this jackpot, I settled out of court for X amount of dollars, and I left and went with Carl, Decca Records. I filled the void of Buddy Holly, who was killed, and they were delighted to have me. But unbeknownst to me, when I sued the company, evidently there was a couple of key jocks, who will go nameless at this point, who were involved in the payola scandal. And once they said, "This kid's trouble, stay away from him," they stopped playing my records, and my career, record-wise, fell apart. But they could never stop me from working because, thank God, I always had enough talent to sustain myself, and I've made a good living over the last 43 years for my wife and children.
Now, the album which you've just, in fact, which just released in this country, has got some very rare outtakes on. Tell us about those.
Well, a lot of our original hits are on it, and I was given an acetate when I did the 6.5 special many years ago when I was here in 57 and 58 on tour here at the Moss Empire Theater. So I was brought in by Lou and Leslie Grade and Harold Davison. television. I mean, I'm talking about the big stuff now. And they paid me a lot of money. We'd fill the theaters, 2 a day, 7 days a week. And I did the 6-5 special with a young lady who was unknown at the time called Petula Clark. And Don Lang, of course, who was passed on recently. And I headlined the Palladium at Blackpool with another unknown artist at the time, Shirley Bassey. So I played for a lot of unknowns who became more famous than I did later on. And I met my friend Tommy Steele there the first time. And I just met Tommy again last fall when I was invited to the Rats Ball by my good friend Bert Wheaton. And,
yeah, well, Bert was probably the father figure of British guitar.
Wonderful man.
But there was some recordings you made when you were 15 and 16. Are they on this album?
Yeah, well, the 6-5 special is live. That I say the acetates when they gave them to me, so they're on the album.
What about the Paul Whiteman stuff?
The Paul Whiteman show was when I won the refrigerator for my family. That was with the backing of the Paul Whiteman band, and the piano player who played for Paul at the time was the guy who went on to own Cameo Records later.
Right.
Funny, isn't it, how life works out? Yeah. You never know. What goes around comes around.
So is that track? Are those anything else on the album?
Well, the original song. I mean, if you hear it, I sound like I was a little kid. My voice was high, and I sound. Rock the Joint was my song because I was a Bill Haley fan. You see, as a matter of fact, Bill Haley was the first American to tour Britain, and I was the second American to come over.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I was the second American to appear here during the rock and roll era, and all the other guys followed afterwards.
So all this material is actually on this album.
Everything is on. It came. I must admit, it came quite good, and it's doing very well.
What are your favourite records that you've cut? You must have a favourite.
Well, I don't have favorites of my own. I never listen to myself on record because I hear all the mistakes, and it drives me crazy. I have other favorites. I mean, I'm a great Marty Robbins fan, and I'm a great Eddie Cochran fan, and I'm a great Buddy Holly fan, and I can go on and on. Louis Prima fan. I like to listen to other people. I don't like to listen to myself.
Well, we're going to play some of your tracks tonight. Can we wish you every success on this tour? And I gather that you speak. We have some Italian listeners to our program.
Oh, you do?
Can you say something in Italian to them?
Saluta tutta la famiglia.
And you're going to go and visit your family. Your great grandparents come from Italy.
My ancestors, my granddad and grandmom on both sides of my family, migrated to America from the island of Sicily. They were starving to death at the time, so they came to America. Thank God. And of course, my parents were born there, and I'm the second generation American, and our children, Joan and I's children, are third generation. So we haven't been there that long. But if I had a choice besides America, you know where I'd like to live?
Where?
Great Britain.
Charlie Gracie, you are always welcome. Let's play some of your records, and thank you for rock and roll.
Thanks, and thanks everybody out there.
Rock, roll, and remember.
Thank you, Charlie Gracie, our guest tonight on The Record Collectors. And we're going to play some very rare tracks from Charlie Gracie now. I'm going to play you this. Well, that's very hard to believe that record was actually made in 1951, which was an educational area for me, quite frankly, to find that Charlie Gracie wrote a song called Rocking and A-Rolling in 51. I wasn't sure about it, but he wrote it, it was published, and Ridge Top Music got the publishing of it. And there is a CD which is available at specialists, very specialist shops, and it's on Cotton Town, and the record number is Cotton Town Jubilee. And it's C for Charlie, T for Tommy, J for Jane, C for Charlie, D for Domino, 2. That's Cotton Town Jubilee, CT, JCD, 2. And it's simple, it's fabulous. Charlie Gracie has 32 tracks on it, and is truly a definitive music biography, you might say, of the man and his music.
Yeah, recorded actually in New York in May 1951. Just looking at an interesting photograph of a poster, and this says, in person, I'll tell you who was actually on the whole of this show. This is Eat Your Heart Out time. Wish you'd have been there. Charlie Gracie, Jimmy Bowen, Bo Diddley, the Cleftones, the G-Clefs, right, the Harp Tones, the Solitaires, Bobby Marchand, and a lot more. Oh, talk about Eat Your Heart Out time. But listen, Eat Your Heart Out time, because Charlie Gracie is quite collectible. Let's give you some ideas and prices and various things. Quite a few major labels. Parlophone from 1957. You had obviously Butterfly, Fabulous, Wandering Eyes. They're all worth good money, I think. Butterfly, a mint Parlophone, £40-50. A Fabulous, nearly the same. I'd say Wandering Eyes not so much, 25 to 30. London is Wandering Eyes, yeah, 25 to 30. Again, the same for Cool Baby, which you don't see very often. Crazy Girl on London on 45 on 45.
Yes.
Then you go on to Coral with things like Doodlebug, Angel of Love, Oh Well, because you're looking at 12s, 15s, the 78 of Oh Well, Because I Love You So on the B-side. You could pay up to £15-20 for a copy of that.
And what about did you mention the EP, Chris?
I was just going to say, don't forget the Charlie Gracie EP on Parlophone came out in 1957, GEP 8630, the fabulous Charlie Gracie. At least £35-40.
Yeah, I'd say at least £40.
And really nice. Those live tapes from the 6.5 special?
Well, what is special about this album? It's 8 minutes to 9 o'clock, by the way. Very rare version of Rock the Joint.
First contestant, Miss Hat.
Well, a young fellow who just won a contest at Woodside Park. That's down in Philadelphia, you know.
Oh, I sure know it, Gene. Our friend Jack Beck has an amateur show there every Sunday. What's this young fellow do?
Well, he sings and plays guitar. His name is Charles Gracie, and he's going to go to work on Rocking the Joint. Charles Gracie.
We're gonna stand on a mailbox, rip up the floor, kick down the window, knock down the door. We're gonna rock, lead the rock to the door. We're gonna rock, yes, rock to the door. We're gonna rock.
And that's, of course, a very, very rare tape, and the quality needs a little bit to be desired. Most of the quality on the album, except for the live tracks, is just perfect, taken from the original masters. But that, of course, from the Paul Whiteman Show in 1952.
Right, yes, let's tell you what's happening next week, and then we'll get back to, well, another Charlie Gracie track. What's happening next week? Well, one's a surprise, keep it a secret, but may have a major American star on the phone you don't know. But I can tell you this, next week we have Chris Hewitt coming in anyway from Ozit Records, who is going to play something from Jim Morrison, which has never been heard before on any radio station in the world. He has promised us a world exclusive. All I will say is it was recorded in Europe in 1968, so if you're a Doors Jim Morrison fan, you've got to listen in.
Wow.
He'll be telling us about Tractor and the string-driven thing, what's happening with the new CDs, his new record label, talking about the Deeply Veiled Festival in 1976 to 79, a history of that. So it looks like we've got a lot of good things next week. And I'll be at Nantwich tomorrow. I'll be doing those record valuations that I was talking to the gentleman from Crew about, so bring your records along. We're at the where is it, the Central Methodist Hall in Hospital Street. Don't forget, nice little record shop down the road. You can have a look in some lovely junk shops in Nantwich as well, so you never know, you might see Mike there looking for a new pair of trousers and shoes.
Well, the thing is, I could always borrow yours, but I don't like being laughed at.
Thank you, sir.
Anyway, let's just repeat the quiz question this week, and we got a winner. Wow, quick.
Yes, we have.
Yes, with the Billy Fury thing, like I've never been gone. Where is it? Yes, here we. The question was, thank you, Tony Pearsall. When did the Beatles appear on the Jukebox Jury? On the 7th of December '63. Which Billy Fury record did they re-preview, and did they vote it a hit or a miss? Answer is they voted a hit, all four of the Beatles, and it was Do You Really Love Me Too. I'm afraid Peter Vincent, you got it wrong. Is it Peter Vincent? You said Like I've Never Been Gone. Brian Shaw said it was a miss. But Peter Gibbs, you won this week, Peter. You can't win there. But the first one in right was Mick Walker, and a little prize we're winging its way to you. This is Charlie Gracie in London, England, on the 6 My Special, the Chuck Good Special, in way back in 1957. Something up to date. Oasis fans, do not miss the new edition of Vox magazine, and you'll also get all the prices of the demos.
And now I'd like to do a song. It's called Fabulous.
And that is live. That is live from 1957. That is Charlie Gracie. Let me just tell you a little bit about the album. It's simply called It's Fabulous. It's Charlie Gracie. It's on Cotton Down Records, Cotton Down Jubilee CTJCD 2, and it's available from good record shop. I have played you some tracks there. I've played you ones which, in fact, the sound quality was difficult for us, but to be honest with you, they're so rare, and it truly is the history of popular music, 1951-52. Next week, we move stage forward, a little bit forward, and we're going to have some surprises, I'm sure, on the Record Collectors. If you want to take part in the programme, or if you've got any views about popular music, or you've got a good record collection, write to us. It's Mike Adams and Chris Savoury, the Record Collectors. P.O. Box 397, Shrewsbury, SY1 3TT. That's SY1 3TT. And I just wondered if ABBA and the Bee Gees, UNICEF in 79, what songs really did they sing? Anyway, it's now the news at 9 o'clock across the BBC in the Midlands. I've enjoyed your company. See you next week.